Hey everybody, it's Lo and welcome back to my channel, Lo Without Limits. In this video, I'm going to share what the HPA-Axis is and how to best support it. So if you want to see that, then just keep watching. HPA-Axis stands for hypothalamus, which controls the release of all of the hormones in your body. Pituitary gland, which is another gland just below the hypothalamus that basically takes all the hormones that the hypothalamus is secreting and properly disperses them to where they need to go in your body. And the last part of HPA is adrenals, which are glands just above your kidneys. Their function is a little bit easier to remember since adrenal and adrenaline sound very similar to one another. And adrenaline is one of the hormones that the adrenals produce, as well as cortisol, norepinephrine, testosterone, and more. Now these glands, plus a few others and some organs, all work together to create your endocrine system. And your endocrine system is the part of your body that produces hormones and basically tells them where to go and how to work to control metabolism, energy level, reproduction, growth, mood, and stress response. And the reason it's the HPA-Axis is because of how close these glands work together within your endocrine system to create your response and work with your sympathetic nervous system as either fight, flight, freeze, to all of the daily stressors in our life, such as work, poor sleep, and tigers running after us, which keeps happening every single day. Now the HPA-Axis does have to be working properly in order to efficiently deal with all of these stressors of daily life, but when dealing with too much stress too often, it can become overwhelmed and get out of whack, and when that happens, both your body and mind will begin to feel the effects. One of the main side effects of an overworked HPA-Axis is high cortisol for way too long. And now we all need cortisol to live. Cortisol is naturally highest when we are awake and will slowly go lower and lower throughout the day as our circadian clock begins to prepare us for bed. And if you've ever had a second wind at night, that's because of the cortisol. And if your cortisol is too high at night, well, good luck with sleeping. And now caffeine is a stimulant that also helps increase our cortisol. So while delicious is one of the reasons why you shouldn't really have it after 3 or even 2, honestly 2 p.m. because that's when you have it and you won't really be able to sleep at night. It's also recommended that it's best when consumed an hour to an hour and a half after waking up. Again, because when we wake up, our cortisol is at its highest. It's what helps us really get up. So when you wake up in the morning, you have your energy, and again, it begins to trickle to be less and less throughout the day. But when you wake up and you already have your naturally high cortisol, and then you're throwing caffeine, which is raising your cortisol up even higher right in the morning, that is just going to cause a bigger dip and a bigger crash in the middle of the day, which is often what leads to wanting more caffeine or maybe a sugary treat to help get you through the day, like that midday slump. So by actually just waiting an hour to an hour and a half after waking up so your cortisol can begin to go down just a little bit, and then you give it that nice little gradual boost up, and then it can go back down, is actually so much better for you than just waking up and drinking it right away. And now when your cortisol is too high for too long, it can actually lower your immune system as well as increase your risk for obesity, type 2 diabetes, and different cardiovascular diseases. Too much cortisol can also negatively impact your brain by reducing your memory and just making you feel down. And those two things, feeling like you can't really remember anything or your mood just isn't the best, is often why people go and grab caffeine and get caffeine as soon as they're awake, which just perpetuates this cycle and leads to something that many people call adrenal fatigue. Some symptoms of adrenal fatigue include constantly feeling burnt out, wired but tired, you really can't go to sleep at night, or you get like an 11 p.m. energy boost because your circadian clock is backwards, and then because of that you also have a really hard time waking up in the morning, and then you probably crave a lot of sweet and salty foods because your brain just subconsciously thinks like, oh, there's calories that will give me energy, or it's sugar that will give me energy. So you do have these cravings in a way to try and get more energy when in fact it's not really helping the situation at all. In a recent video I did on boosting your metabolism, the last tip on stress really relates to this, as high stress can lead to HPA-Axis dysfunction and in turn various metabolic problems. Having an unbalanced HPA-Axis also tends to lead to lower mood overall, more weight gain due to these unbalanced hormones coupled with poor dietary and just health choices, and insulin resistance, which can lead to blood sugar problems and different health issues down the road. It really just becomes this negative cycle of feeling burnt out, so you're going to grab more coffee, so then your cortisol's up more, and then you crash more, so then you have more sugar, so then your blood sugar's out of whack, and then you're getting this boost of energy at night. You can't wake up, so you drink more coffee, and it really just does become this cycle that is really hard to break out of. But hopefully with some lifestyle changes, if you are feeling just burnt out, just that you are exhausted and for some reason you're just not feeling your best and you're just kind of feeling a little bit off, a lot of that can be tied to HPA-Axis dysfunction and adrenal fatigue. And as this does continue on for longer and longer, it does become a bit harder to back out of, which is also why starting now and making healthy lifestyle choices now is super important for your endocrine system and your body overall. That way it does become easier to maintain that healthy lifestyle versus falling into this trap and then having to work even harder to get out of it. But with time and starting just some different lifestyle changes, it is possible. Now, my first recommendation is actually to see a doctor. Since this does have to deal with hormones, just getting your thyroid hormones checked, your estrogen and testosterone checked, your blood sugar checked, and just checking if there is any major problem that may need to be dealt with by a medical professional and different treatments in that sense before just jumping into lifestyle changes alone, because being able to do any treatments and seeing a doctor and getting all of that on track just makes it easier to do these lifestyle changes versus lifestyle changes alone and then feeling discouraged if these changes aren't happening faster or you're not feeling better right away. If there is something major that can be dealt with a doctor, just being able to focus on that first, that way you can just feel in a better spot to make healthy changes and healthy decisions going forward. One lifestyle change is to reduce your physical stress. This can look like reducing the exercise that you're doing overall or the style of exercise. For example, HIIT, high intensity interval training, while people do feel like it gives them a great workout in a short amount of times, and while there are some benefits to it, is proven to increase your cortisol the most out of all different styles of training. So if you're already somebody who is dealing with high cortisol and you're going and doing this high intensity workout, it can just perpetuate that and again, not help your body at all. And then any benefits that are related to exercising, you won't really notice because your body is in this constant state of stress that it can't really recover and do what you want it to do in terms of losing weight, building muscle, and feeling its best. So just by lowering the intensity of your exercise from high intensity to more steady state or just slower resistance training is super good for lowering your body's stress level. Exercise is still a stressor on your body, but there are just ways to do it a bit better, especially if you are already dealing with higher cortisol levels, as well as increasing your rest, recovery, yoga, walks, and just really taking care of your body that way, as well as eating enough. If you're not eating enough, your body is stressed out all the time because it's not sure where calories are coming from, and being in this constant state of stress again will just increase your cortisol and not really lead to recovery that you need. That also means that if you're somebody who loves to do intermittent fasting or every couple of weeks do a day-long fast, definitely try not to do that during recovery in order to get your adrenals and your hormones back on track, because again, not having food for a long period of time just stresses your body out and in turn will actually just hold on to more weight and more calories. So if you're trying to do intermittent fasting for the various benefits that it has, you actually won't see a lot of those benefits since your body is in this constant state of stress. And going back to what I mentioned, reducing or limiting caffeine. So if this adrenal fatigue and HPA-Axis dysfunction is a super major problem for you, try just cutting out caffeine completely, and not even for that long, just enough to get your body back on track, maybe even just a few weeks. But if that is impossible, you're like, girl, I need my coffee, then just limiting it to 1 cup a day. Again, waiting about an hour to an hour and a half after waking up for that first cup, and definitely not having it in the afternoon. It's also super important to get your vitamins. So one of them is just your B vitamins, which is super important in hormone production, as well as vitamin D, either by supplementation, food, or just getting outside in the sun. And this also goes with just getting outside in the sun in general is super important for just regulating your body and calming your nervous system down, especially getting outside in the morning. Again, super good for vitamin D and just also really good for setting resetting your circadian clock as well. If you're just feeling like it's hard to wake up in the morning, but then I'm wired at night, getting outside in the sun in the morning, like 30 minutes. Also getting enough vitamin C through food or supplementation in order to reduce inflammation, lower blood pressure, and fight off those free radicals. And also getting enough of the electrolyte magnesium through food or again through supplementation if necessary in order to reduce inflammation and provide energy for your cells to function properly. And getting these vitamins in is super easy if you're focusing on also just eating well and cutting out your processed junk foods or the sugars, things that will really make your blood sugar and your hormones just go on this roller coaster ride and make it really hard to recover and feel your best. You can also add in some adaptogens to support, such as ashwagandha, holy basil, panax ginseng, and many of the other ginsengs as well, and cordyceps mushrooms. And lastly, balancing your stress levels by getting outside, getting some fresh air, going on a walk, which is great for just having a nice low impact activity, as well as getting that vitamin D and getting that sun in, especially in the morning. Also just by focusing on meditation, breath work, also setting boundaries with work and people, things that are really stressing you out and potentially taking things off your plate that are overwhelming you and making your life more stressful than it needs to be. You can also relax your body by taking a nice Epsom salt bath, which is a really good way to get magnesium in through your body, as well as speaking with a licensed therapist if necessary to help reduce any of the stresses and anxieties that you may be dealing with. To me, having balanced hormones is a key part to living a healthy and happy life in the long run. And as I've mentioned before, I just want to be able to give attainable tips to make that possible for everybody and to do so in a sustainable way in terms of not having to do all these crazy things to where you're keeping track of so much and it's hard to do all these tips forever. I want to be able to give tips to where we can all live happy, balanced lives, but at the same time, it's also things that we can easily do every day, such as getting outside, waiting to drink your coffee, and just reducing stress overall. So hopefully you learned something new about the HPA-Axis and how to support it in an achievable way. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment down below what your favorite way to reduce stresses and what else you want to see here on my channel. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe. I upload a new video every Wednesday. So until the next one, thanks for watching.